Oh, hello, Studio 108, seekers and sages. I'm so excited to sit down today with my good friend Michelle Toth. We are talking about Ayurveda lifestyle and spring. So we have just peeking in for you the yellow tulips. They're very, very beautiful.
So pretty.
And really representative of everything we're going to be talking about, which is blossoming and blooming and colorful and life-affirming and aromatically beautiful.
Yes, but before we go into all of the, the traditional thoughts about spring, transformation, the flowers, the blooming, the growth, we need to take a step back and also think about what spring is like in Northeast Ohio.
Yeah.
It is wet. It is muddy. It can feel very heavy. The skies can be dark. So those are all consistent characteristics with kapha, the kapha dosha.
Right.
So that's what we're going to be talking about today is what symptoms we might be having from that heaviness, and then how we can pull ourselves through the heavy mud and feel like these beautiful flowers and feel much lighter. So that's what we're going to talk about today.
Love it. And it makes me think of the snow we had on Mother's Day.
Yes.
Was a completely different snow than we had had all winter long. So it was a heavy, mushy snow. Like your winter snow probably, well, it didn't, because I had my lilac bushes out all winter. That's where they live, and it didn't break their branches. But Mother's Day snow with that heavy, just thick mushiness really stressed the branches.
Yes.
And then the nice weather comes and that melts off and everything springs back up. So this variable business might be something to think about too.
Right. And the stress on the branches also stresses our mind and body. And so when we think about Ayurveda, it's all about homeostasis and getting back to balance. And so we're going to have certain things or practices in our toolbox that we can pull out when we have those dark, heavy, wet, moist days. And then the days, it could be hours later and the sun is super bright, shining, and it's hot. And, we change with those fluctuations. So we're going to need tools and practices to work with those different changes and how we're feeling because of that.
And I think like your own personal constitution, your own dosha makes such a big difference.
It does.
Like I have a lot of pitta, a lot of fire. Spring is really great for me because my natural tendency is to be fiery and airy,
and
which lightens up the environment of kapha there.
Right.
Kapha. So then people that maybe have more of a kapha constitution would get more bogged down this time. Maybe this isn't their favorite time.
Right. Or if you're kapha imbalanced, then it will weigh you down more because like increases like. So what we want to focus on today when we talk about not battling, that sounds negative, but balancing out the kapha is we want to go light. Gotcha. We want to feel light and airy. So we'll talk about ways to do that.
Okay.
And an example, just a quick story about last weekend for me, Mother's Day weekend, we were down in Columbus for a lacrosse tournament. So totally out of my routine, 2 nights in a hotel room, a bunch of teenage boys, parents, so it was very stimulating and all of that. You're not sleeping in your same bed, you're not eating your same diet. I ate like a teenage boy, lots of chips and sugar, and then the weather was crazy. We were standing in standing water. We were walking through mud. We were sitting outside for hours in the rain. All of our clothes were, wet, so everything was moist and heavy, and I felt horrible when I got home. Well, kind of during the weekend, but then we got home on Sunday on Mother's Day, and it was dark and dreary and just heavy. And so Monday and Tuesday, I knew that I needed to double down on self-care and my practices to pull myself out of it, because I felt very, very heavy in the mind. I was kind of depressed, sluggish, you know, kind of had brain fog and just wasn't motivated. And, you know, and then my body also felt just bloated and, you know, heavy and just like I needed to, you know, metabolize a bunch of things. So that's an example of how the weather can really affect us, or how our environment affects us. And with Ayurveda, you know, one of the tenets is we've got trillions of cells, right? And they're vibrating like crazy, and we really are part of nature. And so the seasons are one of the rhythms of nature that we need to align to, and there's ways that we can do that.
Right. Like I'm thinking, what a great job Michelle does of describing how she feels, because really summing it up, it's like you feel out of whack. And so
Totally
for those times when you just feel out of whack, and however that picture is painted, we need to just have some ways of getting ourselves really balanced again, and not fixing, but so we can flow with the times. Like a little bit of that might have felt good, but you got inundated by too much of it. So then
it was too much for me. Vata Pitta, it was just a lot. And I know myself very well. And so I gave myself, you know, Monday and Tuesday, yesterday I felt better. There's sunshine, and that always helps. But I made sure I got a lot of sleep. I did like I ate a little bit differently. I started drinking my CCF tea. So, you know, there are definitely things that I do and they work. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. So some of the symptoms, you know, that I experienced is very common for springtime. And it depends on where you are in the world because of the weather situation, but it also depends on your constitution or your dosha. But for the most part, we're just going to talk about spring being very kapha, and the symptoms that we experience because of that. So around the mind, exactly what I was feeling, you know, just depressed, hopeless, brain fog. We were talking earlier, I've got a lot of projects right now, and I feel stuck and sluggish about it. I'm procrastinating. I feel like I cannot pull myself out of it. So those are the types of things, you know, with the mind that we might be feeling. Yeah. And then with digestion, you know, I was saying I was bloated, just, you know, a slower metabolism during this time. Stools can be like sticky and oily and heavy, indigestion, you know, just.
And you're going to give us some recommendations for that?
Yes.
Good, because I was like, me.
Yeah, okay. A lot of them are the things that we've talked about before with Ayurveda, just the regular practices. And just being very, you know, conscientious of that and doubling down.
And we have to hear it again. We just have to hear it again and again. Yeah.
And then our respiratory systems are affected. Think about spring allergies, right?
Right.
So there's runny noses, but there's also congestion and like tightness in the chest because it's stuck. And there's a lot of mucus going on because we're like shedding what happened in the winter season, in the spring season. So respiratory illness is, you know, we're more susceptible this time of year as well. And then lastly, our system. So, you know, our lymphatic system, our muscles, our bones, our tissues, those are also affected. Like the lymph can have a buildup there. There are also some interesting things that I just read about. Cold sweats, reduced sweating, and then loss of strength.
Interesting.
And weight gain.
In the spring.
Well, during this heavy time.
Yeah.
You know?
Where you can't really get out and do the things you want to do, so it's a little.
Yeah, and just digestion. So, you know, kind of reviewing what we talked about before with Ayurveda, it's about ama, getting rid of ama, which is toxic buildup, and building more ojas, which is like the juice of life and vitality. So, and digestion is one way to digest the toxins.
Okay.
So it's, it's important.
Okay.
Yeah. So those are kind of the symptoms that we might be feeling. If you're not, you're good. In good shape, and lucky you.
Yeah. Listen anyway, though, because there are a lot of really nice little tips. And when I say, Michelle, like, tell us again, it's because I can only grab what's really relevant for me in the moment. And so, like, today I'm listening and I'll grab what suits me today. Mm-hmm. She could have the same conversation with me 3 months from now, and I will grab different things. So I really hope that you find that can happen for you, and that there's something here today that you can snatch. And
it's a great point, because tomorrow you might not be feeling so great, and you'll remember what we talked about today. And I know a lot of you are teachers. So being able to listen to your students and offer, some guidance, and also be a role model for them is awesome. And we have people in our lives, our families, our friends that might be experiencing this kind of stuff, and you're able to give them a few tips.
Yeah, or at least be aware and give them some space so they can do that. And I will say about teaching yoga is that sometimes we forget, like when people come in and they're feeling really sluggish and kind of that kapha overload, we think, oh, let's just let them lay around in class, and they just need to like lull around on their mats, and they need a certain kind of class. But remembering that we want to bring people to balance. So if they're feeling super sluggish, they need to move, like gentle movements that get the lymph flowing, so that we're offering them a balanced experience, and people don't walk out feeling an extreme, but feeling that ha-ta, that solar lunar balanced integrated wholeness of self. So I can't say that enough.
Yes, really, really good point. And we'll talk about yoga in a minute, and it's from a hatha perspective. So I want you to bring in some kundalini, because I looked in a couple books and I couldn't find anything, but I know that you will know.
Awesome.
So
let's go.
So yes, so things that we can do. So one thing that you can do, or we can do, is do a cleanse. And we led a cleanse probably 6 weeks ago, a spring cleanse, and there were 30 participants, and it was really, really fun. And
it was really well organized. So just like follow this girl and her next cleanse.
Yes. We're gonna have a fall cleanse, because the reason that we recommend cleanses 4 times a year during seasonal transitions is because our bodies are more susceptible to disease and imbalance at that point. Okay. But it's not too late. I did a little mini cleanse Monday and Tuesday after my lacrosse weekend to get myself back to normal.
If you had played lacrosse, it would have been a whole different story. So it really wasn't your lacrosse weekend.
No, but yeah, so cleanse is a good way to do it. And it's not all about diet. A lot of it is about lifestyle and the practices. So, that's one way to do it. We did post a recent blog. It's short and sweet, and it wraps up what we learned from the cleanse. So it's on brilliantmuse.com/blog, and you'll see it there. It's the most recent blog. But that will give you an idea of, we highlighted 3 aha moments, from the cleanse. So cleansing is good, and it's not a cleanse that you buy a bunch of supplements and there's deprivation or anything like that.
Yeah, a cleanse can just be going to bed earlier and, eliminating the very obvious junk foods, alcohol kind of thing. You can do 2 or 3 days of that. I know when I've done the 40 days thing through the Baron Baptiste program, 40 days program, a 3-day fruit cleanse, which a fruit is anything with a seed. So things like spaghetti squash, zucchini, colored peppers, like all of that is a yes. String beans are a yes. But just to eat high water content in fruits for 3 days really was impactful. So that's like a super simple. Yeah.
And so the next thing is focusing on the diet. So we kind of touched on this, but in the springtime, we are less hungry, and we're moving away from the heavy foods that we crave in the winter, those comfort foods, you know, the casseroles and the lasagnas and the crock pot, you know, goodness, all of that, where our bodies just naturally move away from that, and we start craving salads and, you know, vegetables and fruits and lighter foods. So, so honor that, but with raw food, highly recommend that you minimize that.
Okay.
And if you do eat it, make sure it's room temperature and you eat it when the sun is at the highest. So between like 10 and 2 every day, because it's harder to digest.
Okay.
And we're all about digestion and ojas.
Right.
So that means that we need to chew it really, really well, and give our bodies time to digest it before we go to bed.
Okay.
Yeah, super important. The other thing in Ayurveda is that there are 6 tastes that we want to have in every meal that we eat. And those tastes are sweet, sour, salty, pungent, bitter, and astringent. So in spring, we want to move away from the 3 S's, sweet, sour, salty. And those are like the carbohydrates, meats, you know, all those things that are in the comfort foods. Yes. Right.
Potato chips.
Snacky things, and moving more towards the pungent and bitter and astringent. And those are harder to define, so for example, bitter would be coffee, cocoa.
Okay.
Astringent is tea, legumes,
Okay.
dark greens, and then pungent is, I think, more of spices, so onions, garlic,
Okay.
cumin, that kind of thing. And what they say is if you have, this is so true, I'm sure we've all had this happen, but where you go, you have a nice meal, right? Just a beautiful dinner. And then 30 minutes later, and you're full, you know, had plenty to eat. 30 minutes later, you're craving something. You're just like, I don't know what it is. And you're in the pantry looking around for something and you know, like, I can't be hungry. So with the 6 tastes methodology, it satisfies all of the different tastes in your mouth.
Triggers.
Yes.
All those different taste triggers. Yeah.
So it's very satiating,
Yeah.
and it will eliminate those cravings and those pantry raids after meals.
For sure.
And
I also find that when I'm not bogged down with all the almond, I don't crave as much. Like
Right.
the almond, like is there bacteria in there, candida, that's like hungry and screams for things, where you're just kind of like out of whack.
Yeah.
Yeah. So cleaning this up a little bit will help that and eliminate some of the cravings too.
Yeah.
6 tastes per meal, but less sweet, salty, and sour.
Right.
More astringent,
Pungent
and bitter.
And leafy greens are in there,
Yeah,
spinach,
lots
kale.
of leafy greens.
So that's good. And then the other thing that you can do is, you know, use spices to make sure you get all 6 tastes, or seeds or nuts, you know, little things.
Kombucha?
Kombucha would be sour,
Okay.
and you don't want to do it cold.
Right. Trying.
I know.
But she did say coffee, and a lot of people
I
are
know.
like, yes,
I know.
spring is coffee time.
So eating warm, light foods, you know, something that's easy to digest. Oh, the one thing I wanted to say about the 6 tastes is there's Churna that you can buy and for your dosha. So
I'll put that link in too.
yeah, so you have it by dosha, and then it has all the 6 tastes in it, and you just sprinkle it on your food. So that's the easy way.
It's really nice.
Yeah, it is nice.
And then, you know, if you're doing something like, you know, the fruit thing, and you saute your yellow squash and zucchini, and then sprinkle your Churna on, like, you don't even know you're on a cleanse. It's really, really tasty.
Yes, it is really tasty. And the other thing that is a staple throughout the year is CCF tea, and that is cumin, coriander, and fennel. And you can buy it, or you can just make it. And I'll put it in one of those little tea strainer thingy, you know, and put it in water, but you can just put it in boiling water, and the seeds are heavy enough that they'll stay at the bottom of this, and then just drink it, and you won't get the seeds in your mouth.
Yeah, you just don't want to drink that last little sip,
Yeah,
because it's gonna have your seeds in it.
Yeah.
But CCF is cumin, coriander, and fennel, and those 3 spices aid in digestion.
They do aid in digestion.
And so making a tea with those 3 CCF, and I'll put the link at the bottom because they have a pre-made CCF, which is super, super tasty. But if you'd like to make your own, open your spice cabinet, cumin, coriander, and fennel.
Yes, and those, I call it taco tea because the cumin is, it's different, you know, to taste that taste in a tea or in a drink. But it works, and I did it as soon as I got home for 2 days, and it works.
Yeah.
And it's just easy. The other thing to think about with diet, and also with Abhyanga, like a self-massage, is lightening up our oils.
Okay.
So for me, sesame oil is my jam most of the time, but I'm Vata. So lightening up oils when you cook. So maybe using like an avocado oil instead of a, coconut oil.
What would you use on your skin now?
And then on my skin, I'll blend almond oil with sesame oil.
I think my almond oil is the heavier one I use when it's cold or I'm feeling chilly, and the sesame is the lighter, or am I?
I think
No,
it's
opposite. So the sesame is the heavier and the almond's the lighter.
Yeah.
So this time of year, you're blending.
Yeah, it depends on how I'm feeling
The two
and
of
the
them.
weather, but
Almond
or
or
sometimes
sesame.
I'll just do almond oil.
Okay.
But, just play around. There's so many different oils. It's crazy, and have fun with it. But that's another thing that we should be doing. And then we touched on eliminating iced or cold beverages, which is really hard for me.
Is it?
Oh,
I don't like
it's
cold
so hard.
beverages, so I'm really happy about that.
If it's a hot day, sometimes I will really crave, a cold beverage. But again, what that does is anything cold, say we were talking about like the vegetables or raw foods, anything cold puts out the fire in your belly and your digestion, just like it would a campfire, So we want to keep stoking the fire with those 6 tastes, with warm foods, with things that are easy to digest.
Okay, because this is a boggy season, and so we need to take care of our fire, because the natural bogginess of the season is going to squelch it. So if you drink something cold, then you're not supporting that fire, and you might fall prey to coming out of balance.
Yes,
Okay.
but in Ayurveda, it's year round.
Year-round.
Nothing cold.
Ever. Okay.
You can try it and see, how it affects you.
Yeah.
But, again, it's just stoke it. Okay, so lifestyle. We could talk about the daily practices. They stay consistent. So oil pulling, tongue scraping, and again, this is just detoxifying because you don't want to ingest any of those toxins. You want to get rid of them.
Yeah.
And
And the mouth, the tongue is a really nice environment for crummy things to grow.
yes.
So oil pulling is swishing oil in your mouth in the morning. So swish it around for, 5-10 minutes for me. How long do you recommend?
Yeah, 5 or 10. Just do it when you're doing other stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes I'll go longer, but
What kind of
just
oil?
depends.
Coconut oil, almond oil,
I buy an oil from
a special oil.
a
from
special
Banyan.
oil
Okay,
from
I'll
Banyan
We'll put the
Botanicals.
special oil.
This is not a paid advertisement, but it has mint in it, and I think it's a blend of oils, but it's just nice.
Okay.
But you want to do that, and then follow up with the neti pot, and then the Nasya, which is oil that you put in your nostrils, and then dry brushing is good for just your lymph. I know that you're a dry brusher, and for the circulation, right? And just to slough off the dead skin. So there's a lot of benefits.
Yeah, from the outside in.
And up towards your heart. But it can be overstimulating for some doshas and some people. So like pitta, it might be a little bit much, but it's something that you can try. And then the other daily practice is Abhyanga, which is self-massage. And I know a lot of us don't have a lot of time to do that, but ideally it would be, rubbing, massaging your body with oil, letting it set for 10 minutes, and then rinsing it off, not soaping it up and getting it off, but actually just rinsing it because you want the oils to stay on your skin. So it's a nice treat, but
I don't really have time to sit for 10 minutes, but my hack, my shortcut is that I'm very, very loving while I rub my oil on me in the morning. And so I talk about like what a great ankle I have and how grateful I am for my calves. And look at these, like, to just like put some self-love into it and to be in a mindset of self-love and self-affirmation.
Yeah.
Gratitude for your body. Yeah, I've done it that way
I'm
for a
just
lot of
like-
years. And it might be the only moment I'm in self-love the whole day, but I made a commitment to that, so that's good.
That's nice. So the other thing is exercise. In the springtime, it's okay to be more vigorous because vigorous exercise makes us feel lighter, and we're trying to get out of the heavy and go into the light. So, light exercise in the morning is always a good way to start the day and get our bodies moving.
I find that it's really hard, like when you think about this time of year and how important movement is, and yet we have this variable weather thing where I'm so uncomfortable in the cold, like I say no to my exercise because I look out and it's not pleasant enough for me to go out there. So like find other indoor ways to do it.
And it could be, it's moving. Thanks for the correction on that, because it really isn't exercise. It is more about movement, and movement can include breath work.
Yeah. Putting on some music,
some stretches. But a brisk walk, it does make you feel lighter.
Yeah.
Put on a couple layers.
Yeah, I know, we will. I will.
We're getting there.
We hike, and so it's like, not yet, it's not warm enough.
It's not the hike
At
season.
at 50, I need 50.
Well,
Yeah.
but it's true. So the weekend I was cold and uncomfortable physically all weekend long. And the sun's been out and I've been wanting, I should go outside, but I cannot bear to be uncomfortable right now, where I'm just, I'll do my stuff inside. It did.
Yeah.
So I'm protecting that, and it'll get there.
It'll get there. It always does get warmer.
The other thing about spring is, it is about new beginnings and new growth. So trying something new, playing more. This is something for more of the mind, than the body or your emotions. So, trying something new is always fun and an adventure. So that is on the list. As well as
You try a new yoga studio really soon.
as well as wearing certain colors. So like at the beginning of spring, because that affects our mood and emotion. So in the beginning of spring, wearing oranges and reds and like something a little bit warmer while it's cool. And then as it gets, the weather gets warmer, then lightening up with colors like blue and, that kind of thing.
Very cool. That's
so
I like
it's kind of fun. So let's talk about two more things, pranayama and yoga.
Okay.
So there are two recommendations for pranayama that help us feel more light and also help the respiratory system. So the first one is Kapalabhati, or skull shining breath. And that to me seems like, it's a shot kriya.
Yeah.
So this one was new to me, but it clears the mucus in the waist.
It's not new to you.
It's probably called something else.
Yeah.
Okay.
Breath of fire.
Well, that's what I said. But to me, when it seemed like half a breath of fire to me.
Okay, it's from Hatha.
Okay.
So Hatha breath of fire is a little bit different than Kundalini breath of fire, and Michelle and I practice Kundalini together regularly, and we do Kundalini breath of fire regularly. But Hatha breath of fire seems like half breath of fire to you.
Yes.
Because it is an accentuation of the exhale and then allowing the inhale.
Right.
So Kundalini breath of fire is even inhale, exhale, and I'll just do it real briefly. And you think about the air coming in, out through the nose, and the belly kind of rides along because it's relaxed and it's going to respond to the pressure change in the chest. But in Hatha Yoga, the breath of fire is taking a deep breath in and then just pump, 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 pump. And it's more about the action of the belly, okay? And so same name, two different practices.
Okay.
And that's why you don't notice Kapalabhati, because Kapalabhati is like the Hatha Yoga. So Hatha breath of fire, I used to do all the time, and the habit is probably still there. It goes like this.
Yes, that's exactly what it looked like.
Okay, so it's a sharp pull, and you're gonna hear the exhale, and you're not gonna feel the inhale.
Yes, exactly. So that was one. The other one is Bastrika.
Bastrika is bellows breath.
Yes.
Yes.
And they said that improves the respiratory system, the immune system.
It really does, and I can't emphasize this one enough. And even in the Kundalini school, they have a 1 minute breath where you breathe in 20 seconds, you hold 20 seconds, you breathe out 20 seconds. And they say if you do that one practice alone, it will change your life. Because when we are able to breathe deeper, it's not just that we're increasing our lung capacity and bringing more air in, which oxygenates our whole body system, every organ, every gland, every cell. And it's a big bump up for our physical health, but we're also bringing in more prana, which is the life force energy, which is the ojos, which is the juice of life, okay? And that's what we really want. So bellows breath is taught two different ways. And some people teach it more like Kundalini breath of fire.
This one,
like
you guys have very much in the chest. It was higher.
Yes, and the way I learned it was from actually Shiva Ray's school, so I'll just tag that so that people understand that I did get it from like someone who has a serious practice internationally and is well studied, because this is a little less popular in our geographic area. Most around here don't teach it this way. But it's like a drawing into the air until you're so full you can't be full anymore. And then a squeezing out of the air until you're so empty you can't be empty anymore. And so it went more like this.
I might like that.
And so it does end up feeling like you're more in the chest with it, okay? So, you know, you might be able to find 5 or 6 different definitions if you YouTube it. And one thing about yoga is that it's such an old tradition with so many branches of the tree that I consider it all right. So like they're all correct, they're all fine. It's a bunch of different lineages and they're all very, 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 very good and all very true. But you know, you just kind of work with what really works for you. So hopefully that gives you an idea of what options are for bellows.
On that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, as teachers, you know, that's something that you can incorporate into your classes and also do at home. So lastly, yoga.
Okay.
And this, again, it didn't, when I was reading this, I'm like, okay, Tracy's gonna have some Kundalini suggestions, but the emphasis is on cleansing the lungs and also the kidneys.
Okay.
So heart openers are important.
Yes.
And, you know, we all know what those are.
Yes.
And
the lungs are grief.
Yeah.
And so we're releasing all that emotion as well.
Okay.
And in the Kundalini tradition, there are specific kriyas. So there is the kriya for new lungs and circulation. Remember the one where we flap our arms around? Yeah, so that opens up all of this musculature. You have to remember when you talk about the lungs and you talk about breathing, how much of our daily life constricts that. And so we think, yeah, I was on the couch, I was at the computer and I was breathing really shallow, sure. But you're also taking a posture driving and on the computer where you're short across these front muscles, okay? And so what happens when we get short across those muscles and we hold that posture habitually is that the fascial material around those muscles and between those muscles, it gets stuck and sticky and hard. Okay, and so that's why when you stretch, you feel like, oh, like there's this kind of, I don't want to say ripping, I really hope you don't feel ripping, but you feel like a sensation of pulling, you're like, because you're pulling at the fascia, and that's where the nerves are. So when we close like this, and we're like this habitually, and we all are, because that's the beauty of it, is it sneaks in, and then it's stuck in your tissues, and it comes in like smoke under the door, and you don't even realize, but we all have postural holding patterns. And so then these muscles are short, the upper ribs can't move. And so even though you're breathing shallow and you think you're breathing up here at the top of the lungs, you are, but you actually have up here in the top of the lungs that you could even access. So all of these ribs up here under your armpits and in the tops of your shoulders, front and back, those ribs have the capacity to expand and give you more lung capacity.
Even the back.
Yeah.
You've done Kriyas where you
Yes.
talk about the back lungs.
Yes,
you know?
and that's part of the kidney
Focusing
area
on
too,
that.
the low ribs. The low lobes in the lungs go all the way down to your kidneys. I mean, they're on the opposite side of the diaphragm, but I mean, that's like this mid-back area.
Yeah.
So we have so much more lung capacity than we can develop if we stretch. So side stretches, all the intercostal between the ribs, these heart openers and just binds behind the back, okay? It doesn't have to be wheel pose at all, but like this kind of business.
Yeah.
My PT gave me a ball to like rub on with a block on the wall there, or to even take your hands at the door frame and hang like this. It feels really good. Try to think, you could even do a strap around something and hang with the strap behind you. What else? Kidneys?
Kidneys, back before we move on to kidneys, I were also thinking about the lungs. When you're in a pose and you're, pushing to the edge, just remembering to take one final, big breath and really exhale. So focusing on the breathing as you're doing the asanas as well.
Yes, and being really mindful. I think in the power yoga vinyasa world community, it's ujjayi breath, ujjayi breath, ujjayi breath. Yes, but ujjayi breath wasn't intended to be done for 75 minutes, first of all, but it wasn't intended to be done so fiercely. Okay, so in ujjayi breath, it does bring the breath up higher into the lungs, but we can really add a lot of tension in the jaw and in the shoulders, which constricts it even more. So even if you're breathing ujjayi, make sure that you've got a length of breath and an expansiveness of breath, and you're using that. So before you leave your pose, take that last breath, and if it means taking the ujjayi out of it and going just for a deep, expansive breath, it's going to make a big difference. And this is you owning your practice, not just blindly following the directions of some teacher. This is you coming into relationship with your body and owning your practice and doing what's best for you.
Yeah, so well said.
Yeah.
Okay, kidneys.
Okay, so in Kundalini Yoga, there are kriyas for kidneys as well. And the kidneys hold our fear, anger, fear, twists are all right back there.
Yeah.
So like today as part of our Kriya, we did inhale left, exhale right, and we just did a dynamic movement twist. But then of course, if you're practicing things like vinyasa and hatha yoga, you'll have twists in your practice. And that's all just compressing and stretching right through that area. Really important, what sits on top of the kidneys are the adrenals. So like all of that, really important.
We're just a system. We're a miracle.
Yeah, we are.
And it all works together. Yeah. And so it's so holistic and just fascinating.
Yeah. And don't underestimate the lungs, especially like when people have been struggling with this whole COVID conversation. If you are doing quality pranayama work and you're keeping your lungs open and you're moving fluids and the crummy stuff, the toxins through your lungs, you're going to have a much different experience, When you're inactive and all the fluids just kind of sitting there and the bacteria sits in there and the tissues don't get expanded and contracted, they've lost some of their elasticity, then any viral load is going to be a whole different conversation.
Super vulnerable.
Yeah, super vulnerable.
Yeah. Last thing for the yoga is solar plexus.
Yeah.
So, they're recommending cobra, bow, that kind of thing.
Cobra bow, things that are right here. It's the opposite of the kidneys. So twists is also solar plexus work. Third chakra work is always your twists. And you can lie on your back and take a supine twist. You can do like nice deep and breathe in your supine twist. Move the diaphragm through that area. Our diaphragms get really sticky. They get stuck around the ridge of the lower ribs. It's like a cartilage. And so even like when you lay on your back to massage under this lower rib and keep the diaphragm really loose and pliable so that it has a generous range of motion. I feel that in my twists a lot. Yes, and then the wheels and the bridges and the bigger expressions too.
Yeah.
And the nice thing about opening up into some of the bigger back bend kinds of expressions is it does bring up a lot of the energy, which is gonna shake the snow off the lilac bush.
There you go.
There you go.
Yeah.
Melt the
So
snow off the lilac bush. How's that?
yeah, I love that.
I'm thinking too, even with that idea, that we did some running in place in one of the Kriyas last week, or Tuesday night maybe, and like just put on a timer for 5 minutes and some rowdy music and run in place. And one thing I do to kind of like mark the time and keep myself engaged is every minute I turn a different direction so that I'm looking in all directions. And I think this time we were punching while we did it, and you'll be surprised how the heart rate goes up, and 5 minutes is all it takes to move.
It's like plenty.
Yeah, and the lymph gets a lot. We didn't have running shoes on, we were just in our bare feet, we were just like jogging on our little mats, and yeah, for sure. It doesn't have to be, a Peloton or a treadmill.
No.
Yeah.
But all of these yoga tips are great, and you can incorporate it into your classes now for your students, because we should assume that everybody's kind of feeling these things and they might not even know why. So it's a gift to help people work through that.
For sure, and then not even know why. That is so true. Like out of whack. It's like a lot of times people don't know they're out of whack until they snap at the dog or curse really loud when they drop something, and I'm like, why did I react so strongly to that? It didn't warrant that. And I'm like, oh, how about like I have half of a headache, or how about because I'm kind of constipated and grumpy in the belly. Like these little things, people will look at you and they'll say they're fine, but these are universal things. We're all living in this environment. We're all in human bodies, and
the better we feel, the better relationships we have, the better we perform at work, the happier we are. So sleep. Yeah.
Is this a time where we want a little more sleep, even though we also want a little more
Actually, it's less sleep.
Okay.
So we recommend to always wake up with the sun. Now the sun is coming up earlier, so getting up earlier with that. But it's still really important to make sure that your sleep schedule maps with the circadian rhythm. Another rhythm of nature that we need to stay in balance with.
Yeah, I'm noticing it more like in the evening. Like it's 7:30, 8 o'clock, and it's still light, so I feel still engaged.
Yeah, the days are longer.
Yeah, but I feel it less so in the morning.
I still need my 8 hours, so I just know that about myself. But it is something that we need to prioritize for sure.
For sure.
Yeah.
And then we'll all be as beautiful as the tulips.
Exactly. Excellent. All right.
Oh, Michelle, thank you so much. Thanks for taking the time. Thanks for being so thorough. I've got our little list of to-dos that I'm going to put below the video here so everyone can catch the details. And always know that you can reach out. Michelle Toth is at Brilliant News.
Yes.
And she would always love to talk to you and to help you personally if you have specifics about how your dosha interacts with this season, or how your particular health concerns you have some lifestyle adjustments that might support your other healthcare plans. So anyway, thank you. Namaste.
All right. Namaste.
Thank you.
Thanks.